get my laptop to monitor. So, today we are working on inking Zamo the Destroyer, a couple more pages. So, just as a refresher, by the way, sorry I missed last week's show. I was sick, couldn't talk. Um, so this is what we did the week before. This project is, I had a webcomic in 2009 or 2006 to 2009 called Zamo the Destroyer. And then in 2013, I was going to reboot it. So I drew an 8-page re-intro and then I never inked it. So now, all these years later, I'm going to take the 100 and some odd comics from the original and put them out as a book. So I figured I'm going to ink these 8 pages as kind of a coda. So we did 2 pages a couple weeks ago, and now we're going to do, well, hopefully 2 pages tonight. So let's kind of get right at it. Zamo is explaining what has been happening. So in the few years, originally I had, I guess, planned to post one a week for 8 weeks, which is why I've got this, every page has the Zamo the Destroyer, but whatever, it is what it is. So we will just ignore it and let's get right at it. So I was talking about that after the neighbors took out their garden and put in a backyard swimming pool, that then the city built one across the street. So, of course, now that the pool slash park slash school complex is done, there's way more annoying kids wandering around and they never go away. So we're going to draw that. And Zamo the Destroyer was done when I was still living in Vancouver, and it's kind of based off of a little bit the neighborhood I lived in Richmond, which is one of the suburbs, and a little bit a different neighborhood in Richmond that my aunt and uncle lived in East Richmond. But kind of neither here nor there, I guess. Kind of a general suburban landscape. Excuse me. I do still have a little bit of a cough, the cough that I had last week, but we will get through it, and I will try and cover my lav mic when I have to cough, because that would kind of be annoying, I'm sure. So, well, hello, Sleepy Bicycle. How's it going? Welcome to the stream. And hello, Papu Pelu. I hope I said that right. What am I doing? Hi, I am inking a comic from, actually I had a web comic that I used to do a long time ago, and then I'd kind of abandoned it. And then in 2013, I was going to reboot it, and I never really finished it. But now I'm going to do a book of that comic, so I am finally inking this abandoned reboot from 2013. So if I hold this up really close, it may show a little bit. There is a non-photo blue pencil underdrawing that I'm going off of. Whatever non-photo blue pencil I used at the time is super light. The one I use now is much darker and easier to see. What pen is that? This is just a dip pen. I think this is one of the Speedball. If you've ever seen their cartooning kits, you can get them on Amazon, where it has the handle and I think 5 or 6 different tips. So that's what I'm using for that. And I do have a shot glass off to the side with black India ink that I'm dipping into. So when you see me doing that, that's what I'm up to. And starting with a thinner nib, but I do have a couple other ones loaded up and ready to go that have thicker nibs. So I usually do that over top to add up. Like where I've got the text here, I will kind of use a medium to separate that, because it's kind of like a voiceover narration sort of idea. And sometimes with these pens, some days they work great and some days they're a little temperamental. So I do have a bunch of other nibs off to the side I can swap out. Um, Whole bunch because I hoard a lot of these, but black wet ink. I am using Demco India ink. Um, you can also, I mean, well, there's numerous. The Speedball Super Black India ink is another one I've used at times. I haven't, I think, I don't know for sure if they changed their formulation, but it does seem a lot runnier than it used to be. Like I've been using it off and on since the 90s. I haven't been happy with the last couple bottles of the Speedball that I've gotten. So I tried out this Demco stuff, which my local art supply store had, and I'm much happier with it. Uh, Sometimes the risk with a dip pen is sometimes you get what just happened there. Big drop of the ink came down. I'm just gonna blot it with paper towel. Um, Later on, I'll end up scanning all of this stuff, and then I'll make any fixes in Photoshop down the road. But I usually do end up adding some thicker, heavier shadows, so I may not even need to do. We'll kind of see at the time. Why is it called Black India ink? I have no idea, honestly. It's just the name that I've heard my whole life. It's what it says on the box. I think what it's got is some kind of it's like 100% carbon pigment. I don't know how clear that is. Contains shellac. As to why they called it India ink, who knows? It may be that, long ago it was a kind of ink that was common in India, or who knows, right? How these names come up. But it's kind of used as a distinction from, say, I also have Liquitex acrylic ink, and this has like a plastic polymer binder. So this is basically like super thin acrylic paint, which has its uses too. I don't tend to like using it for cartooning because, I'm going to be working on this for a couple hours, usually an hour a page, and it'll gum up the nibs very much quicker than India ink. As for where I'm from Canada, west coast of Canada. So, is it sharp? This? I mean, I wouldn't want to like jam it into my finger, but the tip is about, yeah, for this one, it's about a millimeter wide, and it kind of like flattens out and turns up. So it's not that bad. I mean, I also sometimes for fine lines, I'll use glass pens. These ones also, you know, they're blunted at the end, but you wouldn't want somebody to like ram it into you. Um, you can get, there's some crow quills. Well, they're not really crow quills, but they're like super tiny, black, or, you know, super tiny metal for really fine black lines. These certainly would be sharp. I find though, whenever I try and use these, they don't mine. I don't know if I press too hard or whatever. I can never get a line to come out properly on them. Is Canadian hate Indian? No, no, that's the India ink term I thought was pretty international. If anything, it's probably like, hey, cool. It probably has some origin, like, hey, cool, look at this ink they have from India. We should use it too. It's my guess, but um, as far as I know, that term's been around for, you know, I don't know. I've been hearing it for at least 30 years. I believe even in, 40s and 50s that was a term as well. And the one thing I got to watch with these nibs is sometimes, in fact, I'm going to switch to the glass nibs because uh, sometimes these nibs, you get a whole bunch of ink trapped in them and then they want to slide down and goober up. Oh well, Photoshop. So sometimes this works a bit better, but no, as far as I know, it wasn't. You've seen some videos on the internet. Well, I mean, Canada has idiots just like anywhere else, right? So there's probably some, but I don't think that has any relation to types of ink or drawing or whatnot. So um, it's one of those things where I'm sure at some point people will want to like change the name, but then people will be very confused if it starts being called shellac ink, right? It's like, what's that? Well, it's the same stuff you guys have been using for a long time. Um, but I think one of the reasons why India ink is liked a lot is it does like it dries relatively quickly, doesn't tend to smudge as much, um, but also doesn't tend to gunk up your pens as much as acrylic ink does. In my country, does it snow? Depends where. I'm on the West Coast, so we sometimes get snow in like January, February, but not so much. I have family members who live in on the other side of the Rockies, like in the prairies in the central center of the country, and my brother actually was shoveling snow yesterday. So, um, but where he lives in Alberta, it's a little bit weird. They'll get, you know, it'll be like -10 one day, and a week later, it'll be like +10, and then it goes back down to -10, -20. Um, so it kinda depends. This particular batch of ink is a little bit runny, but there we go. So it really, depends where you're at. Um, and some parts of Canada will be still getting snow into May, and, this year where I live, we barely had any snow. Um, so it depends on the year too. I mean, last year, a couple years ago, we had loads of snow. Um, actually, trying to think, I think it was about 3 years ago. Went out one morning and there we got over a foot of snow in one night. Um, at least it was the light powdery stuff. It's a little easier to shovel, but really depends on where you're located and all that. Um, and even sometimes it depends on your neighborhood. Like in my town where I live, I get more snow than friends of mine who live, a mile and a half away. But it's just how the weather blows and whatnot. I think I'm going to switch nibs. Um, First nib I was using was one that has like a little metal bit on top. So it's supposed to trap some ink underneath, but then sometimes that backfires because then it wants to all dump out at once. So if you're gonna play around with dip pens, usually you end up with a whole collection of different nibs and have favorite ones, and some work better for some purposes, and some days it depends on the day too. Um, like the nib I'm using right now is one of my favorite nibs, but there are days where it does not want to draw at all. Probably depends on how gummed up it is, but yeah, I'm not putting in too much detail on these figures because they're supposed to be kind of far away. And the narrator character, Zamo, is an iguana who frankly doesn't particularly care for humans or their details, so we will go with that. To a certain extent, I'm kind of ignoring some of the details in the underdrawing that I've got here because, yeah, India, Japan, Japani tell is very famous. Japanese oil having yeah, exactly. Some of it's gonna be what it's where the inspiration comes from or where the product comes from. I mean, like you hear somebody in English when we talk about fine china, what we mean is porcelain, but when that was first, I guess, discovered centuries ago, they got it from trading with China, so that's just what they called it. Um, Even to this day, I mean, I think people know that fine china is porcelain, but a lot of people also just like, what's porcelain, right? So uh, the name sticks. That's here. A whole bunch of trees in this park that I'm drawing. My phone is mounted on something that's stuck to the desk, so when I'm drawing vigorously and it shakes the table, it does shake the video. So trying to be cautious in that, because that's probably kind of annoying for people watching. I'll fill in the asphalt here with a fatter nib afterwards, but you get the sense of a busy city park. Uh, this being the one that's now across the street from Zamo and Georgie's house. And for anyone who hasn't seen my previous Wednesday stream, the week before last, the main character here is Zamo, who is iguana, talking iguana, um, who's narrating this whole thing. So we are about to see Zamo. Zamo is, well, obviously it's an exaggeration because the iguana I had for 10 years certainly didn't talk, but she had an attitude. So, um, this character Zamo is loosely based on her. And usually Zamo would be doing things that weren't really iguana related. Uh, but every so often we have Zamo doing things that actual iguanas do like to do, like climb. But it's kind of like if anyone's familiar with Dilbert, um, character Dogbert, every so often would do things like being a business consultant and, you know, an investment banker and screwing over different characters and whatnot. But then every so often you would see Dogbert, wagging his tail and doing other things where you'd go, "Oh yeah, this is a little dog." The iguana I had very prominent stripes behind her armpits, so and of course they have striped tails as well. So it is a long, long time since I was working on this uh, comic originally. But you know what I found is, it's kind of tempting. A lot of artists will be kind of like, well, I don't know, my style or whatever. Um, I, having looked at some of my old Zomo stuff, I realized like my style for Zomo is 90% the same as the style of other comics that I've worked on more recently. So it's kind of fun to see that um, similarity, especially because I would have gone like, oh, I don't know if I really even have a style, and then I would compare, say, Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat to Zamo the Destroyer, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I have a style. A lot of things, the way I draw, all that, that's all the same. Characters are a little different, that's all. I'll also say when I'm working on these kind of projects, especially with a dip pen, um, I find it's really important to work top left. Well, because I'm right-handed, to work top left down to bottom right. If I was left-handed, I'd do it the opposite way, because that kind of keeps your hand from dragging through. Now, um, most of this is already dry. Like I can touch that and it's not going to smear. There's some wet spots still, but it is something to consider when you're planning um, where you're going to start your page and your order of operations, so to speak. You do want to be mindful of that. So now that first line is done, and I am about to, well, going to swap over to a fatter nib in a second so that I can add a little heavier blacks in, which will make it look a little more balanced. And also, because I did have a couple of ink smears over there, then that'll also kind of hide that. So it does help. And in the case of Zamo in the tree, I mean, obviously, Zamo's going to be on the trunk of the tree, and that's going to be fairly dark. Depending on the species, of course. I don't mind having some areas of the tree almost look black because, depending on how the shadows go, that's what it's going to be, right? Um, also give a bit of a texture into the bark, which makes it look a little more 3D. And as I said, we are going to darken in the asphalt over here. In the first couple pages, I did outline the narration, so we're going to do that. Um, Not with, well, this is a medium nib, so, and I don't mind the thick and thin. That kind of, it is a bit of my style. We use a really fat nib in between um, the frames, so I'll do that next. Probably this Zamo the Destroyer. I don't know. I may leave it in for the book because all the other comics are going to have that. But this comic was originally posted on MySpace. That's when it started. So this is actually the 20th anniversary of when I started Zamo the Destroyer, which is why I'm kind of going like, you know what, maybe I will do a book of that comic. So I'm gonna have to do starting in the next couple weeks. Let's go back through. I've got um I don't have it right with me, but I have these kind of books, the Profolio kind of books. This is actually for a different project, Ricky B. the Rock and Roll Rat, which is what I work on Friday nights. So pop in for those streams. But it's similar. I have like 5 or 6 of those books full of Zamo comics. Um, and they were, of course, scanned back in the day for posting online, but in those days, a gigantic image for online was 600 pixels tall. but printing resolution is like 300 dots per inch or 300 pixels per inch. So that's going to be a problem because, one of those comics would then print at like 2 inches tall. So I'm going to have to go through and rescan everything. And there are definitely things back then where I messed up and I went in, fixed it in Photoshop. So I'll have to redo all those fixes. So that'll be one of the projects I'm working on over the summer. But I'll keep you guys posted on that. Now, as far as the Zamo stuff goes, this reboot, this is page 3 out of 8. So if I usually do on average about these are a little bit dark. On average, I do about a page an hour. So that means that we will have 2 more Wednesdays inking this reboot before it's kind of ready to go. At least as far as the inking goes, like I said, I'll have the Photoshop that needs to be done. But what I'm going to do after that is actually have 200 short, probably not quite short stories per se, but I had done a podcast about Zamo, like narrated by Zamo and whatnot. So I'm going to turn those scripts into probably be a few books because, otherwise there's like 200 of them and they're like about 5 or 6 pages long. So yeah, it's a little bit much for one book, but I'm thinking I will turn those short stories basically into chapters of um, a collection of short stories. So then I'm going to start working on illustrations for those books. So we will be working on Zelmo stuff for many, many Wednesdays to come. And let me just divvy up between the frames. So, got a nice fat black line. Although that one's looking a little gray in the middle, but the fat black line is kind of a style thing I started doing on Zalmo. Some cartoonists will put what they call a gutter, so like it's like a white space in between the frames of the comic. I kind of like jamming things in, so instead of leaving a nice white gap and whatnot, I was just like, yeah, just make it a black gutter, so big fat black line. I'm gonna put some very tiny tick marks in to indicate grass. I mean, you kind of get the sense that that's grass, but yeah, doesn't need it all over, but here and there it's kind of a good thing to add for texture. And this is the sidewalk, so let's split that out. At some point, the sidewalk ends, and you just walk up the pathway there. Add a little more veining in these leaves. One of the running jokes from the old Zamo comic was that Zamo was always trying to capture bunnies for his secret basement lab, but what he wanted to do with them was to brainwash them into becoming an army for him, for her, which never really worked. But it's funny when I was going through some of the old comics a couple weeks ago, I'd forgotten so much detail of the plot lines, and so it was like, I can't believe I had my main character trying to capture bunnies. It's also kind of a bit of a nod to the Vancouver area, particularly Richmond, where I grew up, and kind of actually parts of Vancouver Island too. Especially Victoria has like a major problem with invasive bunnies. Like we do have the cottontails, they're um, native here, but then there's tons of rabbits that I don't know whether they were originally farmed for meat in like the 1800s and then they all got released, or whether they're like ones that escaped the pet trade, or somebody just didn't want to feed their pet anymore and just set them free. Uh, worked for Free Willy. Why not for Floppy? Um, so there's parts where you drive by and you see like just whole herds of rabbits uh, sitting and chewing on the side of the road. So by the time anybody would be seeing this in the book, like they've already been through 200 pages or so of Zamo. So it will seem less weird in that case. Whereas I'm doing this on stream going like, this stuff's all really weird. the other weirdnesses with this comic is Zamo, as a reptile, tends to refer to all humans as monkeys and chimps, which, hey, we do share 80, or no, it's like 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees, I guess. Zamo is very insistent that Zamo, on the other hand, as an iguana, shares 98% of her DNA with Tyrannosaurus rex. I think most paleontologists would beg to differ, but someone would point out paleontologists are chimpanzees because they're people. So, and therefore they have a vested interest in pretending that they are somehow not chimpanzees. So, I think I didn't quite shake that ball of ink up enough before I started. So, you do tend to get some separation of the binder and the pigments and all that. So, Take a wild guess that when I first drew this side, I must have been out for a walk or a bike ride in one of the local parks where somebody had not cleaned up after their mutt. Fortunately, not necessarily an uncommon sight. A little fly buzzing around. Of course, Samo being an iguana, iguanas are low to the ground, so this would be an issue, more so than for humans walking by. And now we are back to the medium-sized nib for putting in those the boxes around the narration. And the drugs joke about the bunnies here kind of relates to somebody I used to know whose um, nickname was Bunny. And that individual did indeed like drugs. So, of course, I waited so long to put this out. The odds of Bunny actually ever seeing this are very, very low. So, but whatever. Yeah, we will do some tweaking in Photoshop on the lettering, but that's That's a problem for future Pura. So, there we go. Although I shouldn't say that because, Bunny, as the case may be, Bunny was known for bearing grudges for decades and would keep tabs on people he used to know and they didn't like. So there's a very actually a fair chance that Bunny might find out when this book comes out and read it, and then he can be very offended by certain things, but tough titties. Anyway, let's go on. So we got here. It's always fun to draw crushed cars. Now, I am not known for my ability to draw cars. I can draw them if I'm like, especially tracing from a reference photo or whatnot. Uh, that's why we have a couple local car shows that happen here every summer, and I always go to them with my camera and I take 300 photos of these old vintage cars from different angles in case I might need one. But in the case of this is just from the imagination, and we're not going to worry too much about whether it looks like a real car. It's the airbag that got deployed. Here in the middle, I have no idea what I'm drawing, but it's fine. It kind of reminds me of what's his name, Joe Lennon, who's on Facebook as Lennon Cartoons. I think I think this is one of his. It might be somebody else with a similar style, but it's like a single panel cartoon. It's a guy at a mechanic's shop, um, and the hood of the car is lifted. There's all sorts of things from like a gerbil wheel, TV antenna, all sorts of stuff. And the mechanic says, "Ah, well, there's the problem, sir. The cartoonist doesn't know how to draw a car engine, or a cartoonist has no idea how a car works. That's your problem." I'm butchering the retelling, but it kind of applies to any time I have to draw anything mechanical. We'll fill in the asphalt with the thicker black nib as well. So this is one where I had to look and go like, what the hell am I even looking at? But and again, we will use the fatter black nib. I'm not too concerned about areas where the solid black is broken up because in this context, it's just going to look like parts of the car that have, you know, gotten smashed up somehow. So that works. And there are big lakes of liquid ink on here, which they eventually dry. I'll just, when I move on to the second page that we're going to work on tonight, I will just be very careful in how I set this aside so that it lays, well, relatively flat. All right, so that is the first page. Well, it's the third page, but it's the first page we're inking tonight. Now, let's carry on. So I carefully move that up onto, got my laptop up on a little stand here so I can sit on the laptop. And now let's move on to page 4. So, Zama's already complained about this new pool that's going in across. Um, and now Zama's going to complain about her pet human, Georgie, patronizing the pool. And I'm going to hold it up so I can see what's going on. Yeah. Put a squiggle there so I remember that that's driveway and needs to be um, covered up. kind of fun in a well, funny, interesting to look back at some of this stuff um, from 2013. I think by 2013, I was already regretting that I had not had kids. But I mean, kind of sticking with what's accurate for the character, Zamo is not a fan of humans and less so of children. So, like the joke in the next panel, nothing a well-placed pillow wouldn't fix, but for some reason Mrs. Churchman won't let me babysit. I look at that and go, "Wow, that's kind of over the line in some sense, but it's also kind of where fitting for Zamo." So there'd definitely be some stuff in like the Zamo short stories that I may kind of have to rewrite. Um, for content reasons. Like, things that might be taken the wrong way in the modern era, but just saw the comment, Papu Pelu, damn, what are art? What art is this? It's for will end up being part of a collection of comics from my old web comic um, that these characters belong to. Um, the idea with these pages was that it was kind of written when I was thinking of relaunching it a few years after I had initially stopped doing this comic. I was going to have the main character Zamo kind of introduce what had happened to the various characters in the past few years. So it's narrated by Zamo, who's this little iguana character. It's almost a bit of an ass. Uh, so that was the origin of it. And the reason why I decided to ink this now is I'm getting ready to do a book of those old comics. And figured, well, this will be a kind of a good coda, I guess. Sort of as the comic wrapped up sort of thing. Just funny because on the eighth page, it looks like it comes across as if there was going to be more to the Zamo comics that was going to continue, and then they don't. So I'll have to do like a ninth page or something, or just like a postscript for the book explaining that instead of continuing with the comic, I started doing a podcast version, narrated by this character Zamo, and then I will have books that are the podcast scripts as short stories. So hope that kind of it gives some explanation. But I realize this is like a very weird sort of world to suddenly get dropped into. I think even my other comic projects are all kind of a bit of a what on earth is this? See, I have my old habit of the first thing being up here. I mean, it is higher than the not dressed like that you aren't, but I probably should have drawn it the opposite way so it flowed, made more sense, but whatever. Something I still do in some of my comics now where it can be a little bit what order does this dialogue go in? These characters are Zamo's neighbors, who Zamo does not get along with for obvious reasons. caught that trip before it happened. Kind of realizing at this point how much Hope and Harold here look exactly, not exactly, but very similar to the in-laws in my one of my current comics, Noah's Archipelago. Noah's in-laws look a lot like Hope and Harold, which I don't think I ever realized until, well, just now. It's like, oh, Hope has the same haircut as Agnes. Harold looks a lot like Frank. Excuse me. Sorry about the coughing. All right, I think we are going to call it there. So let's have another look at what we've done so far today. In the first half, some of this stuff is still a little wet, but there we had Zamo talking about the park across the street that's now been put in. I'll lift that just a little. Yeah. And complaining about it. I mean, there's plus sides. Zamo is an iguana and does like to climb trees. But, lots of humans around, which Zamo is not as thrilled about. And the humans bring their dogs, and the dogs crap on the park yard and all that stuff. And then because there's more people coming into the neighborhood, now there's a flashing red light at the corner because you get people bashing into each other and having car wrecks. And then the light comes through the window, and Zamo can sense it through the blackout curtains, and that annoys Zamo to no end. So then we have Zamo starting to talk about her pet human, Georgie. I think this is the first time we see Georgie. Maybe not. No, I think it is actually the first time we see Georgie in this particular 8-page sequence. Um, so she's the secondary main character, the main human character. And because now there's a park with the community center and the gym in the community center across the street, Georgie has a membership there and just walks across, whereas Zamo preferred when Georgie drove across town to go to the gym. And then Zamo's talking about the neighbors, the Churchman clan, um, and all the kids and the noise and all that sort of stuff, which Zamo finds reason to complain about, even though they're in the house next door, and realistically, how much would Zamo hear? That's beside the point. Anyways, so now we are halfway through inking that 8-page. It was to be a reboot in 2013. Ended up losing part of that, but anyways, I'll fix that later. Um, that then got abandoned, and now it's going to be the coda in the comic collection that I'm going to get together later this year of all the original Zamo comics that I used to post on MySpace back in the day. Um, I've been wanting to do that book for quite some time. So finally, we're going to get it off the to-do list and just get it done. So next Wednesday, we will be inking 2 more pages from this little sequence. In terms of other streams, tomorrow night I'm working on the Noah's Archipelago coloring book. Hopefully get 2 pages done. That's actually going to be inking with markers instead of the dip pens. Friday we're going to be working with dip pens again for 2, who knows, maybe even 3 pages out of Ricky B Goes to Sea, my Ricky B the Rock and Roll Rat graphic novel. And then on Monday, we will be back with working on another spread from the Miles Morrow's Pursuit of Happiness book. And next Tuesday, we will be working on marker illustrations for the Noah's Archipelago 2027 calendar that I'm working on. So, and then of course, next Wednesday, like I said, we'll be working on Zamo again. So that's it for tonight's stream. Hope you've enjoyed watching me rework on some really old comics. And we will catch you again real soon. So bye for now. Take care. And thanks for watching.